G'day, Argentinian driver Franco Colapinto has signed a multi-year deal to drive with Alpine. I woke this morning to see this story on social media, and this, and this, and this, and plenty more. Then I checked my email, and sure enough, there is a press release from Alpine saying that they've entered into an agreement with Williams Racing to secure the services of Franco Colapinto on a multi-year deal. But don't they already have two drivers in Jack Doohan and Pierre Gasly? They certainly do. But the press release says that the 21-year-old Argentinian driver will be taking up the role of test and reserve driver for the upcoming 2025 season. But they've already got test and reserve drivers in Ryo Hirakawa and Paul Aron. Trust me on this, Alpine will not be interested in those two. Their focus will be on Franco Colapinto and his duel with Jack Doohan for that second seat. Now, if you're thinking, doesn't Jack have a contract to drive? Yes, he does. And he's already had one race in Abu Dhabi. But I understand from various reports that his contract is only for 6 races. But where does that put us in the season? Well, the 6th race is Miami. Could that be Jack's last race? Well, certainly Jack's in the box seat. He's the one in the car. If he does well, that's going to mean no chance for Franco Colapinto. And what does well? Well, I gather he's going to have to be very close, if not better, than Pierre Gasly. But that is a lot of pressure on a young man. And as you know, in Formula One, you put a lot of pressure on someone like Jack, who's had one race. That could well lead to errors on track. And that's the last thing Jack will want to be showing his team early on in the season. I thought Franco was going to be reserve driving for Williams. Williams team principal James Vowles said if he was to let Franco go, they'd want £20 million, I think it was. That's a lot of money. These are like huge football transfers. And without a doubt, there's been a deal done where Alpine has paid some money, and I don't know how much, I'm not sure any of us do, to Williams to secure his services. After all, Williams have invested a lot of money in Franco and got him to the point where he is now. They've given him 9 races last year.
Just wanted to say a big thanks to Williams, to all the partners, to everyone who gave me the opportunity of becoming a Formula One driver, of making my dream come true, and for making a reality these 9 races.
Albeit he did have a number of crashes. I did see a couple of wry comments about Williams mechanics being not unhappy that Franco would be leaving. But Jack's had 1 race. Franco's had 9. He knows a whole lot more about Formula One. Jack has still got to learn a lot of that information, and he's going to have to learn it express style. So what has attracted Alpine to the Argentinian driver? Well, his popularity is one thing. He went from 700,000 followers to 4.3 million in some 6 months. Of course, you don't win F1 races based on Instagram popularity, but it does bring a very large audience to Alpine. An audience that will quickly love Alpine if Franco's in that seat, and importantly, purchase Alpine merchandise. And I'd be very surprised if Alpine didn't come out very strongly with merchandise for Franco straight up. And how does Franco's audience compare with Jack's on Instagram? Well, more than 10 times. But I'll go back to the point, Jack is the man in the seat. He has the opportunity to block Franco. Franco's very much at the mercy of Jack. And I can just imagine if Jack has an incident on track in one of those first 6 races, where's that camera going to go if Franco's at the track? Straight on him, as it did with Liam Lawson when Daniel Ricciardo had incidents going back to last season. If we have a look at the start of the season, we go to Australia. It's going to be a huge race for Jack. It's his home crowd, admittedly, and probably thankfully on Jack's part, he shares that audience with Oscar Piastri. I don't think he's going to make the same mistakes that Daniel Ricciardo made some years ago when he moved to Renault because, as he admitted, he did far too much publicity for the Australian Grand Prix because the team wanted him to be out there selling their story. That took his attention away from the important part, and that is the racing. So who's made these decisions? Well, I imagine it's both Flavio and Oliver Oakes, the team principal. And Flavio, as you probably know, is ruthless. He axed Esteban Ocon from the last race, putting Jack in instead. That came as a surprise to a lot of us. But he did say that my job is to put Alpine at the top, and there's no room for feelings in Formula One. And when he was recently asked if Jack's seat was safe, his response was the only thing that we can be sure of is death. And what does Flavio think of Franco? Well, he's enamored with him. He stated he was among the best young talents in motorsport right now. What this will do is create a gladiator-type environment at Alpine, where 2 drivers are having to fight for that seat. Now, this is a little bit tricky for me because I'm friends with both of these drivers. I love them. They're great kids. I spent time with them, I've dined with them, I've photographed them. So having to comment on this and watch it at the track when we get going for season 2025 is and will be a little awkward. I did a photo shoot at Franco's hotel after the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix, and afterwards I sat chatting with his managers, Maria and Jamie. And Jamie was sitting on a little rock wall there with all these little pebbles below. And I said, what does next year hold for you guys? And he said, well, look, these are all the parts. And he indicated below all these rocks. We just can't work out how they fit. So don't doubt that there has been a lot of work going on the part of his management, trying to sort out a drive, or at least a way forward for Franco in 2025, because, as you know, he was very, very popular. Came in, a lot of fanfare, and yes, as I said earlier, there were a number of crashes, but still I think the sport loves Franco Colapinto. And when you look at the size of Australia, say 27 million people, and you've got 2 drivers, and then you look at Argentina, 1 driver and 46 million people, that is a huge advantage for Franco, because this sport is all about money. Yes, it's about winning, but if you can't win, at least you want a lot of money. And I imagine that Alpine sees that Franco's audience is perhaps a cash cow. It's certainly going to do him no harm. One thing this will do is bring a whole new element to the start of the season. There'll be immense interest in what goes on with Jack Doohan racing for Alpine. This is the sort of drama that F1 fans love, and I don't have any doubt that Jack's fans will be very dark about this and they won't be feeling at all at ease. However, the rest of the sport will be absolutely lapping it up. It's just another storyline and another element to what is a fascinating sport. A couple of you have said, could it not be possible that Franco might get Pierre's seat? Well, I think that's highly unlikely. Pierre is their number 1 driver. He's a seasoned performer, did very well in the second half of last year. And I would suggest, unless he goes rapidly off the boil, his seat is more than safe. And I imagine he'll be pretty darn happy that all the attention and pressure goes on to his teammate. After all, your closest competitor in Formula One is always the man on the other side of the garage. So what would I like to see? That's a question I'm asking myself. Ideally, I'd love there to be a seat for both Jack and Franco on the grid, because I have emotional interest in both of them. But if that isn't the case, I think I'd like to see in the seat. Certainly testing will be interesting. Jack will need to put in some long hours and show some real form during those 3 days so that he's up and running for Australia. But it wouldn't surprise me if Franco was there as well. Exciting times, to be sure. As will the test day in Maranello, when Lewis Hamilton steps into the Ferrari for the first time. Now, while I won't be at the track, I will be providing you with images and a post-test day video. There is huge interest in his move to Ferrari, and I think that day will be a defining moment. Hopefully, he comes over and talks to the fans, because that's where I have a photographer stationed. Carlos Sainz did it a couple of years ago when he first signed with the team. And it's something that a lot of the drivers do. They get driven out from the garage to this area where the fans can actually stand outside the track and peer in. And that may be our first shot of Lewis in a Ferrari red race suit. And finally, before I leave you to get on with the rest of your day, oh, and by the way, please hit the subscribe button and like this video if you haven't done so already. Nyck de Vries mentioned as perhaps a reserve driver for McLaren next year. Nick is also a likeable young man who didn't have very long to shine in the sport, but perhaps he had longer than Jack Doohan if Franco manages to steal his seat. Now, before you head across to kimellman.com to pick up one of my F1 books or one of the calendars, I'll say thanks for watching and stay passionate.